Hi, my name is Reid Ribble, and I'm inspired by people who tell the truth.
All right, and welcome to the Lantern Podcast, a show that is produced and promoted by students out of Good Cause Productions right here at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. I'm your host, Ryan Martin, and I have another brilliant guest for you today. He was in the U.S. Congress from 2011 to 2017, representing Wisconsin's 8th Congressional District, which spans much of northeastern Wisconsin. Before that, he was a successful business owner, running a commercial and residential roofing company and serving as the president of the National Roofing Contractors Association. Now he's a practitioner in residence on the faculty of the political science program here at UW Green Bay. Please welcome Reid Ribble.
Well, I think we're living in a post-truth era. So, and I think it's been pushed forward by social media and the fact that anybody can kind of hide behind a keyboard using an anonymous name and title, and all of a sudden they put information out there, and misinformation and disinformation can spread at the speed of light. And if it kind of tickles your ears and you're prone to hearing that, this is what drives conspiracy theories and things like that we're seeing in the world. And so, but it also can spur racism. It can spur anti-Semitism. It can spur outrage. And so I just really admire the truth tellers out there that are willing to say things that are honest.
Yeah, you are absolutely speaking my language right now. So what I guess curious to think about like what we do about this. How do we address the lack of truth telling?
Man, that's a legitimate concern, and it's a great question. I don't know that any of my answers are going to be even remotely satisfying. Because I think it's a place where people are earning money now. Yeah. So you can have a YouTube channel, you can have an X account, you can have a TikTok, and if you're getting enough views, you get paid for those views. And so now we are now paying people to spread misinformation, and people are benefiting from it. And so I think initially you're going to have to try to figure out how do we wind that clock back. We have to begin, instead of rewarding the people that are spreading misinformation or disinformation, we need to reward the truth tellers. But telling the truth often doesn't get 1 million views,
right,
and 100,000 subscribers.
Yeah, I mean, we've ultimately really incentivized controversy, right?
Exactly right.
On social media, and in doing so, that encourages dishonesty.
Right, and the big forces behind it, whether it's Elon Musk at X or Meta or whatever, they really don't care because they're also profiting from it. And so as long as there's a profit network, you use the word incentive, and I think that's exactly right. We've got the incentives in the wrong place. And so we're now paying the penalty for it. At some point, I do believe that the moral hazard of it will swing it back. I just don't know how long it'll take.
Right.
People do get tired of outrage.
Yeah.
And social media spreads outrage. But at some point, they will weary of it, and they want peace. And when they finally want peace, we'll start to see truth emerging again as a primary morality.
Right. So, okay, ultimately, this show is really about, your journey and how you got to where you are. And I'm curious, so I want to start there when it comes to this value you have. Where do you think you obviously value truth-telling? You're known for that in your professional life in all sorts of ways. Where did this value come from for you?
I think from the earliest days of my youth. I mean, my father was a World War II veteran, and when he got married and started having a family, he was a relatively religious person. So I grew up with a solid religious background in Christian tradition, and my dad would honor the truth, and in fact, I might get a spanking, and sorry, I'm in the generation where parents spank their kids. I might get a spanking because I lied, but even if I did something wrong and I admitted it and said the truth, I would not. Okay. And so my dad put the incentives in the right place to encourage truth telling. And then of course we were taught those Christian values centered around that Judeo-Christian ethic of being honest. And so to the degree that you can tell the truth, I think it creates a more level playing field for everybody to have discourse that is based on some reality.
So I'm thinking, I know a lot about your time in Congress, partially because I lived in Wisconsin during that time.
Yeah.
And you were my rep, but also, but what I don't know as much about is your time before that. And so I'm
Okay.
curious, when you grew up, you're from Wisconsin, but I think you went to college in Michigan. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I actually, my father, who's, like I mentioned before, a fairly religious guy, he was the Outagamie County and Winnebago County chaplain for the sheriff's department. And so he wanted all of his kids to go to 1 year of some type of theological training or Bible school. So that was a requirement before going to college. And so I went to Grand Rapids School of Bible and Music because I had both an interest in Bible study and music. And so I went there. I never finished that schooling because my primary driving interest was construction. I loved being outside. I loved working with my hands. I loved building things. And so my dad had this small roofing company that he did roofing work to help supplement the family income. And I got into the roofing business through that doorway. And I took that company and grew it. And that became my vocation. So I was both a commercial and residential roofing contractor for 35 years prior to running for Congress in 2010.
Okay. Just a weird little side note here that my first job was actually roofing.
There's a lot of people whose first job was actually roofing, and often they lasted about a year.
Yeah, I didn't even last that long. I was a teen in middle school. I think my next door neighbor was a roofer and asked me to come out and help him with some jobs, and so I would go every now and then.
It's a very physically demanding job, and I admire the men and women that do that work.
Yeah.
Because you know what, being a roofer in Dallas, Texas in August, that's real work.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, okay, so you're running this business throughout Wisconsin.
We were licensed in 26 states.
Oh wow, outstanding. Okay,
did work in Georgia and Michigan and Kansas and Missouri. I mean, we were all over the place.
Okay, so I'm thinking back to you take over. It sounds like a small roofing company from your dad, and then you start. Obviously, you take that nationally. One of the things I'm always interested in when I talk with entrepreneurs like this is what were the sort of critical moments, or maybe the moments that felt really scary to you as you were doing it. This is again before you ran for Congress, which was obviously a big decision that I want to get to.
Right.
But as a business owner, what were those moments?
Well, there were a couple of key things, I think, and these are principles that, again, my father taught me. The last thing he told me before he left it for his own retirement was he said, do what you do best and forget the rest. And so focus on what you're really good at, and don't get drawn into all these peripheral things, but do the things you're really good at. And the other thing he said is, if you really want to make dollars in the construction business, particularly in roofing, you want to look for jobs that have the letter D in them. He said, if you can find a job that's dirty, that's dangerous, that's difficult, it's demanding, the more D's in that job, the more dollars that equates to, because fewer and fewer people want to do those types of jobs. So if you become best at that, you'll always be successful. And I never forgot that. And so I wasn't really fearful of taking on that challenging, high, steep church or cathedral project, or some high-rise building, or working for the university and doing some challenging new construction things that were very decorative, for example, or maybe innovative, like in the area of water management or vegetated roofing or energy, providing energy solutions. Those things always kind of tripped my trigger. And I thrived on the difficult, and it made my life challenging, but also really interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So you said you ran for Congress in 2010.
Yep.
Right. So talk about your interest in public service. When did that start, and when did you make the decision to run?
I think there always must have been some latent desire for public service, because I always admired the generation before me that fought and reset the world power dynamic during World War II, and this era of really 80 years now of sustained peace. I mean, there's these conflicts that show up, like Ukraine and Russia and things like that, in Vietnam, and I don't want to diminish those, but they were not at the level of a world war. And it was that generation whose public service took us to this place that we're on, and part of the wealth that we have here in this country because that generation was willing to do public service. I was concerned primarily as my own children got older and I started having young grandchildren that the ever-growing national debt was going to put a threat to the freedom and prosperity that we enjoy as Americans. And I was very concerned about my grandchildren. I look back at it today, the national debt when I ran for Congress was a novel $11 trillion. And today it's $38 trillion.
Yeah.
So I wasn't particularly good at my job. But at the end of it all, that is what drove me into public service. And I will say this, during my time in Congress, we did reduce the annual deficit from 1.5 trillion to just over 450 billion over a 6-year period. And so that's $1 trillion a year. People will tell you that you can't cut spending in Washington without hurting people, and that's not necessarily the case.
Okay. Yeah. So, you know this, but we had Maya McGinnis on campus about a month ago.
She's terrific, isn't she?
She was fantastic. And she actually came into the show as well. So we got an episode with her.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
No, I mean, absolutely.
She's brilliant.
Yeah. Super, super brilliant, super smart. Just lots of good ideas, real honest take on a scary situation.
Yeah, it's extremely troubling. And the one big beautiful bill that just passed Congress, they will tell you that it increases the national debt by 3.5 trillion. And that's true, but that also ignores that it's 3.5 trillion above the baseline of 19 trillion. So it increases the national debt by 22.5 trillion, not by 3.5 trillion.
Okay.
So that means in 10 years, you're looking at a national debt in almost $60 trillion.
Goodness. Okay.
Yeah. It's a problem.
Yeah. So thinking back to your time in Congress, what are some of the things that you're most proud of, some of the things that you feel really good about?
Yeah, there's very few of them, to be honest with you. But I would say the things that I'm most proud of is my willingness to tackle bigger issues that nobody else wanted to tackle. For example, since you had Maya here, I wrote the only bipartisan Social Security reform bill since 1983, and it would have wiped out the $32 trillion debt in Social Security over the 75-year window, and it would have paid 100% of the bill. And that was a Herculean project to do. I was cautioned against it, warned against it, but I was doing enough town halls with people to know that they wanted solutions for these problems. And so there was the citizens here in Northeast Wisconsin that gave me the courage to attempt to do those big things. I wrote a reform to the way the U.S. government would budget. I had 237 co-sponsors on the bill. Ultimately, they wouldn't bring it to the floor because they actually were afraid it would pass. And that would have restricted the power structure in Congress, returned the power back to the American people and the taxpayer rather than the 4 big leaders in the House and Senate. And so, so even though it was a failed effort, the time of doing it and the promotion of it caused everybody to think a little bit different. One big success I had was that there were 400 and some children that were locked, that were adopted by American families in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I was able to go over to the DRC and get all of those children released. And so there were some wins there, but mostly a lot of big swings and misses.
Is that so? When I asked, you said there weren't very many of them. Tell me, there weren't very many of these positive moments. Tell me more about that. What made it so hard? I
mean, the system there runs on what I call a pyramid of power. So if you think in terms of a pyramid, at the top of the pyramid is the Speaker of the House, and right below the Speaker of the House are the majority and minority leaders, and then immediately below them are the committee staff. Immediately below them are the committee chairman. So, I mean, the regular members are now at least 3 levels removed. Right. Below them are your own staff, and below that is the member. So the members have the least say on what goes on in Congress. Virtually everybody else that works there has more say than the member themselves, even though you hold the voting card.
Right.
And they need to flip that power structure upside down, making the speaker a servant of the members and empowering the members. And the biggest reform that could happen in Congress, from my view, in the House Representatives, not the Senate, because I don't work in the Senate. I didn't work in the Senate, would be to empower the individual members of Congress to select their own committee chairman. Right now, committee chairmen in the House Representatives are selected by the Speaker. And so they're subject to the Speaker because the Speaker can take that power away.
Right.
If they were selected by the members of the committee, they'd be subject to the committee members, and they'd have to do the will ultimately then of the voters.
Oh, okay.
So it's upside down.
So one of the things, just to pivot a little bit, I like to talk about is mentorship. But a big part of this show is understanding people's journeys and how they got here. Sounds like your dad was a pretty influential person in your life. Who are some of the other people that helped you find your way?
Well, I'll tell you, my wife, for sure. We've been married for 50 years. She's a brilliant woman, much smarter than I am. Big fan of always being the dumbest guy in the room, because if you surround yourself with brilliant people, your life instantly gets better and more rewarded. And so for sure, her, like I said, we just celebrated our 50th anniversary this year.
Congratulations.
And so there's that. When I went into Congress, every single member of Congress every single freshman member is appointed a mentor that you meet with weekly for 6 months. I had the great fortune of being appointed to Congressman Mike Pence, who later became governor of Indiana, then vice president of the United States. And he was a significant influence on my life in that he talked a lot about you shouldn't go to all these cocktail parties. You don't need to spend your whole life fundraising. Staff is going to tell you you have to do these things, but you don't. Go home to your wife, go home to your family, spend time with them, make sure they stay a priority, because this place causes a lot of divorces. Make sure it doesn't happen to you. And so getting advice like that was liberating, because he was right. My staff wanted me to do the full circuit every single night. I would have been working, they rode me like a thoroughbred. And so I appreciated
someone to
Mike, who had been there for 10 years at the time, to kind of give me some guidance there. Very helpful.
That's good. So tell me about the decision to leave Congress, because you were there 6 years, I think.
6
right?
years, yep.
Yeah.
I had originally thought I was going to stay for 8. And I told the people here that I would stay no longer than 4 terms. So I didn't break that pledge by leaving after 3, but I could have stayed an extra term had I wanted to. But I had just worked for 6 straight years to reform the budgeting process in the House of Representatives, and I worked really hard at that. And when I say I worked really hard, there were times I was working 60, 70 hours a week trying to drive a piece of legislation forward. Now, this was a piece of legislation that in my first term, I was able to get 35 Republican co-sponsors, not enough to get any attention. My second term in Congress, I got 150 co-sponsors, but 35% of them were Democrats and 80% of them were Republican committee chairs. So this legislation had a lot of support. Paul Ryan, who was the Budget Committee chairman, agreed to do a markup on the bill, which would have brought it to the floor had it passed the House Budget Committee. So we did the markup at the Budget Committee, and it passed with bipartisan support. It was the first bipartisan piece of legislation to pass the House Budget Committee since 1974.
Wow.
The first one.
Yeah.
The Budget Committee by its nature is very partisan.
Right.
The fact that I could write a piece of legislation that both sides supported, that seemed to be pretty significant.
Yeah.
Referred to the Rules Committee, and the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, Congressman Hal Rogers, killed it. And so it never got to the floor, even though the chairman of the Rules Committee was a co-sponsor of the bill, even though the chairman of the Budget Committee was a co-sponsor of the bill. So go to my third term. I met with Kevin McCarthy, who was the House Majority Leader. Paul Ryan is now Speaker of the House. And I said, what do I need to do? How many co-sponsors do I need to do to guarantee this gets a vote on the floor? And he said, you get me 175 and I will bring that bill to the floor no matter what. So I went and got 237. And it got stopped. Tom Price, who was then now the new Budget Committee chairman, who just a year before voted for this legislation in the committee, wouldn't bring it to the floor. And so now I'm saying, if I worked this hard for 6 straight years and did everything, I asked Mitch McConnell to do a sense of the Senate, vote on it, and it passed with 69 votes. I asked President Obama if I sent it to the White House, would he sign it? He sent me a letter back saying, you get that to me and I will sign it. And I had 237 co-sponsors on it. It would have passed the House, and it was the most significant budget reform in U.S. history. It would have required the Congress to do its job. And there were all kinds of pressure points that if Congress didn't do it, they'd get stuck in Washington. They couldn't work on anything else until they passed it, a budget and whatnot. And so it was pretty important piece of legislation. And so, but Tom Price wanted to write this bill on his own.
Okay.
And I said, well, take my name off it, put your name on it. I don't care. Do an amendment in the form of a substitute. That's what it's called. And just change and put your name on it. You can have all the credit in the world. I don't really care. I'm here about trying to save my grandkids. Credit is nothing to me. But he said, no, President, the next president is going to be President Trump, and I want him to get this big win. So for politics, it didn't happen. Trump gets elected, and Trump pegs Tom Price to be HHS director. So he's out of Congress, and it died.
Okay.
But I could see this happening. I'm saying if you can work for 6 years on something and do exactly what you're supposed to do, that everybody tells you what you're supposed to do to be a serious legislator, and you cannot move legislation, then I don't need to waste my time.
Right.
Because I took a pretty significant pay cut to be a member of Congress, and I was losing money every single year being there. And so the cost to be there was higher than the benefit.
So tell me, because you, before we get to the three questions we like to end every episode with, I'm curious. You're a practitioner in residence here at UW Green Bay. One of the reasons you're here is to sit down and talk to our students and give them guidance and all sorts of things like that. And I'm, as we're talking, it's hard not to feel a little dejected about Congress. And so what's the message that you have for students?
The message I have for students is that it's their generation that's going to be the next great generation. My parents' generation was the greatest generation. This will be the new hero generation. This will be the generation that saves America. These 20-year-old students sitting here at UWGB, learning as much as they can about their future career and what they want to do, they're going to be the generation that's going to pull America away from this precipice of a debt crisis and all the things that are going on that threaten their freedom and their prosperity and their futures. They're going to do it. And so being here and being able to talk with them and encourage them to get engaged in the system, it's their country, and for them to use their own voice to apply moral hazard to members of Congress who aren't doing their job is the most significant thing that they can do. And so that's my message to them. I went into Congress cynical. I left even more cynical, and I don't like the feeling of being a cynic. I don't like that. I want to be optimistic, futuristic, and hope and dream for something that's better. And as I get around these students here at UWGB, I leave here every single time invigorated by what I see.
I love that. Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that. That's great.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So are you ready for our three questions?
I'm ready.
All right. I might have to actually pull them up and remind myself what they are.
That's okay.
Starting out with one, I hope is an easy answer for you. Who do you hope you're inspiring?
Well, for me, I think everything I do now is about my own grandkids. So I'm hoping I'm inspiring them.
Yeah. Fantastic.
And if I can inspire them, then who knows what they can go on and do and change.
Right. How many grandkids do you have?
I've got 7.
7 grandkids, right?
Yep.
Fantastic. Good.
Age 1 to 22.
All right.
So,
a 21-year span there.
Yeah.
So every 3 years, basically.
Yeah, that's great.
Excellent.
That's
all right.
awesome.
What is a book or movie or song that changed your life that you would like to share with others?
I'm going to share 2 books by the same author. The author's name is Frederick Buechner. It's spelled Buechner, Frederick Buechner. And he wrote a book titled Telling the Truth, which hits me right in my soft spot. And he wrote another book called Wishful Thinking. And he's a modern day C.S. Lewis. He's an incredible writer who wrote some incredible books. Every single book he's ever written, I've read, and some of them I've read multiple times.
Outstanding. That's good. I should tell you, some of my first experience hearing you speak, I mean, obviously, when you were in Congress, I, heard you speak and knew of you. But I think it was actually after, it was in probably I don't know, it'd be 2020. It was during the pandemic, actually. You and Aaron Weinshank, faculty member here, were doing a talk, I think a virtual talk. But part of what I remember being struck by is the honesty with which you were approaching what at the time, I think we were talking about whether or not Trump would leave office, a lot of concerns there. This is right before the election. It was my mom's birthday. That's how I know this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I was watching from her house in Minnesota with her. But so, yeah, I definitely get a sense for the truth-telling piece there.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Last question. What is a piece of advice that you would offer someone who hasn't yet found their way?
Yeah. For someone who hasn't yet found their way, I would tell them to not be fearful of failure. I think we fear failure because it's so personal when we have a personal failing. But at the end of the day, we learn the most when we fail. Mm-hmm. And so you shouldn't be afraid of failure because you can fail up. Mm-hmm. And because it's such a learning experience. I don't think you have to embrace failure, but I don't think you should fear it. And so Abraham Lincoln failed a whole bunch of times before he was elected president. A really great example of somebody who knew how to fail up. And so I think people are so afraid of failure because it's such a personal thing, but they should not be afraid of it.
This is, I know you know our chancellor, but this is something Mike Alexander mentions regularly: is the importance of failing in the right way. So
exactly right.
Fantastic. Where can people learn more about you, support your work, support initiatives you care about?
They can follow me on X at Rep Ribble.
Okay.
So they can follow me there. Obviously, they can go to my Wikipedia page and see what it is I'm all about. Not everything. I don't think everything on there is 100% accurate, but accurate enough that I'm not afraid of having people go there and find out. And then on occasion, if they just pay attention, they'll see op-eds that I'm writing and different things that matter to me that get out in the public sphere.
Yep, and we try and share those when we can. So. Reid, I want to thank you very much for being here. I want to thank you for your service to UWGB. I mentioned that you're practitioner in residence here, helping our students out, connecting with faculty, and doing all that great work. So thank you so much for all of that.
You're welcome. It's a great joy for me to do it.
All right. I am here with Rachel Sankey. Rachel is the production manager here for Good Cause Productions, and she's our engagement coordinator. And Rachel, we've got some big news here from Good Cause. Tell us about it.
Yes. So this is coming out after this day happens, but starting today, we have a brand new social media manager. Starting with her name is Isabel. She is a marketing major on campus.
Outstanding. So we have had people are familiar, longtime listeners are familiar with Camilla, who's been on the show a couple times. Camilla is fantastic, but Camilla graduated.
Yes.
So you can't be a student worker after you graduate. That's just not how it works.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and Camilla is fantastic, but we are super excited to have a new person. She's going to be great. What does she do in that role? Yeah,
Isabel's going to be doing a lot of different things. So, of course, as a social media manager, she's going to be running our socials. So coming up with content ideas, scheduling the content, curating that content, working with students and faculty across campus to help set up times to create that kind of content. And she might end up being drawn into some other creative projects with me, like bulletin boards and other fun things.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So, and we can see her work at UWGB Cause. That's UWGB CAHSS.
Yes.
They can also follow me at Anger Professor if they want to see additional stuff. So lots of good things happening.
Yeah.
Would you please take us home?
The Lantern is brought to you by Good Cause Productions at the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay. The executive producer is Ryan Martin, and the production manager is me, Rachel Sankey. The engineer for today's episode is Kennedy Punky with support from LiveX, and that music you love so much was arranged by our very own Michelle McQuaid-Dewhurst. Special thanks also to our guest, Reid Ribble. If you haven't already, please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. Keep being amazing.